The diamond bracelet caught the morning light streaming through my kitchen window like frozen fire. I watched from behind my lace curtains as my son Marcus fastened the expensive piece around Victoria Walsh's wrist, both of them beaming with Christmas morning joy. The bracelet had cost $45,000 according to the receipt I had glimpsed yesterday. $45,000 for a woman who had been part of our family for exactly 9 months. If you are watching this, please subscribe and let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Me. Well, let me show you what my loving son got his actual mother for Christmas. I held up the ceramic cookie jar shaped like a snowman. $22 from the discount section at the local department store, still bearing the clearance sticker that Marcus had forgotten to remove. After 36 years of raising him, after every sleepless night when he was sick, every dollar I spent on his education, his wedding, his first house down payment, I received $22 worth of clearance kitchenware. Marcus had explained it with that patronizing smile he had perfected since Victoria entered our lives. Mom, you always say you bake too many cookies anyway. We thought this would help you store them better. Practical. That was exactly what I had called it when I smiled sweetly and thanked him for such a thoughtful gift. Because that is what mothers do, right? We smile and pretend our hearts are not breaking while our children hand us scraps and call it love. I watched Victoria link arms with my daughter-in-law Jessica as they admired the diamonds in my hallway mirror. Victoria had appeared in our family 8 months after my beloved husband Thomas passed away, showing up at Jessica's baby shower with her perfectly styled silver hair and designer clothes. Somehow she had managed to become Mom Victoria while I, the woman who actually gave birth to Marcus, had been reduced to just Mom, apparently only worth $22 in clearance dishware. The December frost covered my kitchen window as I set the cookie jar on the counter next to the Christmas cards I had never sent. Cards that would have cost more than my entire gift. The irony was not lost on me, though I doubt Marcus would appreciate it even if I explained it to him. I had spent the morning cooking their Christmas dinner, of course, standing in my kitchen for 8 hours preparing prime rib, homemade Yorkshire pudding, roasted vegetables from scratch, and that elaborate chocolate soufflé Victoria insisted on, even though no one but her actually ate rich desserts anymore. My feet ached, my back screamed, and my hands were raw from washing dishes. But hey, at least I got $22 worth of a cookie jar out of the deal. The front door opened and I heard Victoria's voice carrying through the house. We are heading out to show the bracelet to my sister. Now would you like to come or want to join us? Just an announcement that they were leaving, taking their precious Mom Victoria on a victory lap, while the woman who had provided their Christmas feast stood alone in her kitchen holding clearance store dishware. I heard Marcus call out, "Thanks for dinner, Mom. See you next week." Next week. When they needed something, no doubt. My jaw tightened as I listened to their car doors slam one after another, followed by the distinctive purr of Marcus's SUV pulling out of my driveway. The house fell silent except for the dishwasher and the ticking of the grandfather clock Thomas had loved. I looked around my empty kitchen at the mountain of dishes I had volunteered to clean up, at the leftover food that would feed me for a week because God knows they would not take any home. That is when I noticed Victoria's purse sitting on my counter, forgotten in her excitement over her shiny new jewelry. A black leather Hermes bag that probably cost more than my monthly Social Security check. She had left it right next to my $22 cookie jar, and somehow that felt like the universe delivering a message. I picked up the purse, feeling its expensive weight in my hands. Inside I could see her wallet thick with credit cards and cash, her phone in a diamond-studded case, and a prescription bottle. How careless of her to leave behind something so important. How very careless indeed. A slow smile spread across my face as I carried Victoria's purse to my bedroom where I could examine its contents properly. After all, I was just being helpful, making sure nothing was missing before I returned it. That is what good mothers-in-law do. Victoria's wallet was a treasure trove of information, and I do mean treasure. As I carefully inventoried the contents on my bedroom dresser, I could not help but marvel at how much someone could learn about a person from their purse. Cash nearly $800. Credit cards from every major bank, plus store cards for Bergdorf Goodman, Tiffany and Cartier. But it was the folded papers tucked behind her driver's license that made my eyebrows shoot up. Bank statements. 5 of them printed just last week. Our dear Victoria was not just well off. She was loaded. The kind of loaded that makes a $45,000 bracelet look like pocket change. Her checking account balance alone had more zeros than I had seen since Thomas's life insurance payout. And here I had thought she was just another widow trying to find companionship in her golden years. If you are watching this, please subscribe and let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Her phone buzzed constantly with text messages, and I could not help but notice the notifications lighting up the screen. Wire transfer confirmed. $35,000 from something called Pacific Trust Holdings. Conference call scheduled for Thursday. Bring the Morrison files. Morrison. That would be us. I sat in Thomas's old recliner. The one Marcus had tried to convince me to donate because it did not match Jessica's modern decorating style. Funny how everything that mattered to me did not match their vision. The prescription bottle caught my attention next. Anti-anxiety medication prescribed just 2 months ago, right around the time she had started getting more involved in our family finances. You see, Victoria had been so helpful lately, offering to drive me to doctor appointments, volunteering to review my insurance policies, asking detailed questions about Thomas's retirement accounts and my investment portfolio. Just want to make sure you are properly protected, dear, she would say with that sweet smile. But now I was wondering exactly who was being protected. The house phone rang, jarring me from my investigation. Mrs. Morrison, this is Officer Rodriguez with the State Police. I am calling about a report we received regarding a missing person. A Victoria Walsh. My heart skipped, but my voice stayed steady. Victoria Walsh. I'm sorry, officer, but I am not familiar with that name. Our records show she was last seen at your address earlier today. Her daughter filed the report when she did not return home and was not answering her phone. Her daughter. Interesting that she had never mentioned having children. In all her stories about being a lonely widow, somehow, she had forgotten to mention family members who might file missing person reports. Well, we did have Christmas dinner today, I said carefully. But I believe she left with my son and daughter-in-law. They were going to show her new bracelet to her sister. New bracelet. A diamond Christmas gift from my son. I let that sink in. Perhaps you should contact them. Marcus Morrison and Jessica Morrison. After I hung up, I looked at Victoria's phone again. 23 missed calls from someone named Angela Walsh and text messages getting increasingly frantic. Mom, where are you? The police are looking for you. Please call me back. So Victoria had a daughter who cared enough to call the police when she went missing, unlike my son who would probably wait a week before wondering where I was. The irony was delicious, really. Here I was holding the belongings of a woman whose child actually worried about her well-being. I opened her photo gallery, telling myself I was still just being thorough. Most recent photos showed Victoria at various family gatherings. Our family gatherings. Victoria at Marcus and Jessica's anniversary dinner. Victoria at their Memorial Day barbecue. Victoria at Jessica's birthday party. In every single photo, she was positioned between Marcus and Jessica like she belonged there more than I did. But it was the older photos that made my blood run cold. Pictures of documents, screenshots of bank statements, photos of the inside of my house, my bedroom, my home office, areas where a guest had no business being. The timestamp showed she had been documenting things for months, long before her relationship with our family had become so cozy. My hands were shaking now as I scrolled further back. There it was. A photo of Thomas's death certificate. Another of our marriage license. Screenshots of property records showing the value of our house. And a photo that made my stomach drop. My social security card, which I kept in my jewelry box upstairs. Victoria Walsh was not just a lonely widow looking for family. She was conducting surveillance. The question was why, and more importantly, what was she planning to do with all this information? The grandfather clock chimed 7 times, and I realized they had been gone for over 2 hours. A visit to her sister should not take that long, even with stops to show off expensive jewelry. My phone sat silent on the nightstand. No calls or texts from Marcus letting me know where they were or when they might return Victoria's purse. I carefully repacked everything exactly as I had found it, but not before taking photos of her bank statements and the more interesting documents with my own phone. Victoria was playing games, then she had just taught me the rules. The SUV's engine announced their return, and I heard Jessica's laughter floating through the winter air. I positioned myself in the kitchen, Victoria's purse in hand, ready to play the concerned mother-in-law who had discovered their oversight. But as I watched Victoria through the window, studying her face as she walked toward my door, I noticed something I had missed before. The way she moved, the way she surveyed my property, the calculating look in her eyes as she approached. This was not a woman who had carelessly forgotten her purse. This was a woman who had left it behind on purpose. "Oh my goodness, Eleanor. Thank you so much for keeping my purse safe," Victoria gushed as I handed it over. Her performance was Oscar-worthy. "Cannot believe I forgot it. I must be getting old." She laughed that tinkling laugh that had charmed Marcus from day one. But now it sounded like nails on a chalkboard. "No problem at all," I replied, watching her carefully check the contents. Her fingers moved quickly through the wallet, and I caught the almost imperceptible relief that flashed across her face when she confirmed everything was still there. "I hope you enjoyed showing off your beautiful gift." "Oh, we did. Marcus is such a thoughtful boy. You raised him well." The way she emphasized boy when talking about my 36-year-old son made my skin crawl. Jessica and I stopped by my sister's house so I could show the bracelet to my family. They are all so envious. If you are watching this, please subscribe and let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Marcus appeared behind her, already reaching for his coat. "Well, Mom, we should get going. Work tomorrow. You know how it is." 2 hours ago, he had been beaming about his generous gift to Victoria. Now he was treating our family Christmas like an obligation to check off his list. "Actually, Marcus, before you go," I said, my voice sweet as honey, "I got a call from the state police. Something about Victoria being reported missing." The color drained from Victoria's face. "Missing? But that is ridiculous. I'm obviously not missing. That is what I told Officer Rodriguez. Apparently, your daughter filed a report." I watched Victoria's composure crack for just a moment. "She must be worried sick about you." "My daughter?" Victoria's voice pitched higher. "Oh well, yes. Angela can be overprotective ever since her father died." She waved her hand dismissively. "I should call her and explain. You have a daughter." Jessica looked genuinely surprised. "Victoria, you never mentioned having children." The silence stretched uncomfortably. Victoria's eyes darted between all of us, clearly calculating her next move. "Well, we are not very close. She lives in Portland. Different lives, you know how it is." But I knew better now. Those text messages had been desperate, loving, concerned. That was not the communication pattern of a distant relationship. Victoria had been lying to us about being alone in the world, just like she had been lying about so many other things. "How wonderful that you have family," I said, still smiling, "and they care enough to worry when you do not come home." "That is precious." Marcus shifted uncomfortably. "Mom, we really need to get going. Early morning tomorrow." "Course, sweetheart. Drive safely." "Victoria, I do hope your daughter stops worrying once you call her back." I watched through the window as they walked to their car. Victoria moved quickly, already dialing her phone before she reached the passenger seat. Marcus and Jessica followed more slowly, and I could see them talking, probably about Victoria's mysterious family revelation. As soon as their taillights disappeared, I went to my computer. Angela Walsh, Portland. Took me exactly 15 minutes to find her on social media. And what I discovered made everything click into place. Angela Walsh was not just Victoria's daughter. She was a successful financial advisor specializing in estate planning and wealth management. Her Instagram page was full of photos with her mother. Recent photos showing a close, loving relationship. Photos at family dinners, birthday celebrations, holidays. This was not a distant, estranged daughter. This was a devoted child who spoke to her mother regularly and spent holidays with her. So why was Victoria pretending to be alone? Why was she inserting herself into our family when she clearly had one of her own? Kept digging. Victoria's social media presence was minimal, but Angela's was open and her mother appeared frequently in her posts. Mom visiting for Thanksgiving from November. Family dinner with Mom and the cousins from October. Mom's insights about the Patterson estate case were invaluable from September. The Patterson case. I Googled it on impulse and found myself reading about a complex estate fraud investigation that Angela Walsh had worked on. An elderly woman had been systematically defrauded by people she trusted, people who had gained access to her finances through emotional manipulation. My hands went cold. I printed the article along with several others about Angela's work. Estate fraud prevention, financial abuse awareness, protecting seniors from family members and friends who exploit their trust. Either this was the most incredible coincidence in history, or Victoria Walsh was running a very sophisticated long-term con, and my son had just bought her a $45,000 bracelet with money I was starting to suspect he did not actually have. I called Marcus's cell phone. It went straight to voicemail, so I tried the house. Jessica answered, her voice tight with irritation. "Hi, Eleanor. Marcus is in the shower." "That is fine, dear. I just wanted to ask him something about his finances. You know, with the expensive gift and all. I am curious how you two are managing such generosity." Pause was too long. "What do you mean?" "Well, a diamond bracelet is not exactly pocket change. I am just impressed that you have both done so well for yourselves." I kept my voice light, curious, grandmotherly. "We're doing fine, Eleanor. Marcus got a big commission at work." "How wonderful. When did that happen?" He had not mentioned it. Another pause. "Recently. Look, I should let you go. Marcus needs help with something." She hung up before I could ask another question, but she had told me everything I needed to know. People who are legitimately doing well financially do not get defensive when asked about their success. They brag about it. I sat in Thomas's chair looking at my $22 cookie jar and thinking about $45,000 worth of diamonds around Victoria's wrist. Then I thought about those bank statements in her purse and her daughter, the financial advisor, and the surveillance photos she had taken of my personal documents. Something was very wrong with this picture, and I was starting to suspect that I was not the only victim in Victoria Walsh's game. The question was whether Marcus and Jessica were players or pawns. Either way, tomorrow I was going to start finding out exactly what Victoria Walsh was really after. And if my instincts were right, Christmas was about to become very interesting indeed. I did not sleep much that night. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table with a pot of coffee and every piece of information I could find about Victoria Walsh, Angela Walsh, and something that was becoming clear was not adding up. By sunrise, I had a plan that would have made Thomas proud. My first call was to Angela Walsh's financial planning office in Portland. I used my sweetest grandmother voice when her assistant answered. "Hello, dear. This is Eleanor Morrison from Virginia. I am calling about Angela's mother, Victoria. There was a little incident yesterday, and I want to make sure she is all right." "Oh, you must be the family friend she has been visiting." Ms. Walsh was so worried yesterday when her mother did not answer her phone. "Is she okay? If you are watching this, please subscribe and let me know where you are watching from in the comments below." Family friend. Interesting choice of words. Yes, she is fine now. But I am curious. How long has Victoria been staying in Virginia? Angela must miss her terribly. Oh, it has been several months now. Since September, I think. Angela calls her every other day. Such a devoted daughter. She was planning to visit for Christmas, but Victoria insisted she wanted to spend the holidays with her new friends there. September. Victoria had been in Virginia since September, which meant she had been planning whatever this was for 4 months. And she had deliberately kept her daughter away for Christmas so she would not interfere with her operation. Well, she certainly has become part of our family here. My son even bought her jewelry yesterday. The silence on the other end was deafening. "I'm sorry. Did you say your son bought her jewelry?" "A beautiful diamond bracelet. $45,000. He is so generous." "Ms. Morrison, I think there might be some confusion. Victoria has her own jewelry and her own money. She would not need anyone to buy her anything. She is quite well off financially." I let that sit for a moment. Well, perhaps I misunderstood. You know how it is with us older folks. After I hung up, I poured another cup of coffee and stared out at my winter garden. Victoria Walsh was wealthy, had a devoted daughter, and owned plenty of jewelry. So why was she letting my son spend $45,000 on another piece? And why was she pretending to be alone? My phone rang and Marcus's name appeared on the screen. Finally. Mom, we need to talk. Good morning to you too, sweetheart. How did you sleep? Mom, seriously. Jessica and I are coming over. We will be there in an hour. The tone was all wrong. This was not a social visit. This was an intervention, which meant Victoria had already gotten to them. I spent the next hour preparing for battle. They arrived looking like they had dressed for a funeral. Marcus wore his serious business suit, and Jessica had on her handling difficult clients outfit. They sat across from me at my kitchen table like a tribunal. Mom, Marcus began. His voice carefully controlled. Victoria is very upset. She feels like you violated her privacy yesterday. I raised an eyebrow. By keeping her purse safe. I am afraid I do not understand. She thinks you went through her things. Well, of course I did. What if something had fallen out? What if she had had medication that needed to be refrigerated? I was being responsible. Jessica leaned forward. Eleanor, Victoria feels uncomfortable about some of the questions you asked last night. About her daughter, about her finances. I was making conversation. I thought it was wonderful that she has family who care about her. Marcus's jaw tightened. The thing is, Mom, Victoria has been through a lot. Her relationship with her daughter is complicated, and she does not like to talk about it. Complicated. That was not how Angela's assistant had described their regular phone calls and family dinners. Missy. And the police call. Was that complicated too? They exchanged looks. Jessica spoke carefully. Victoria explained that her daughter has some control issues. She gets anxious when she does not know where her mother is. It is actually part of why she needed to get away from Portland. Control issues. I almost laughed at the audacity. They were rewriting the narrative in real time, turning a concerned daughter into a controlling monster to explain away yesterday's inconvenient phone call. How awful for her, I said sympathetically. It must be so hard to have family who care too much. Marcus missed the sarcasm entirely. Exactly. That is why what you did was so hurtful. She trusted us with her privacy, and then you started interrogating her about her personal life. Marcus, I asked where her daughter lived. That is hardly an interrogation. Mom, the point is Victoria is family now. She has been like a mother to Jessica, especially after her own mom died. She has been there for us in ways that... He stopped himself, but the damage was done. In ways that what, Marcus? In ways that I have not been. Jessica jumped in quickly. That is not what he meant. No, I think it is exactly what he meant. Victoria has been like a mother to Jessica. The kind of mother-in-law who deserves a $45,000 bracelet, unlike your actual mother who deserves $22 in clearance dishware. The silence was arctic. Marcus's face flushed red. That gift was thoughtful, Mom. You know that. Yes, you have explained how thoughtful it was. I walked to the window. Tell me something, Marcus. How exactly did you afford Victoria's bracelet? What do you mean? I mean, $45,000 is a lot of money, even for someone with your recent commission. Another exchanged look. Jessica's tell was that she twisted her earring when she was lying. She was twisting it now. We have been saving up, Marcus said. For how long? Mom, I do not think our finances are any of your business. You are absolutely right. Your finances are none of my business. Just like Victoria's purse contents are none of hers. I turned back to face them. But I am curious about something else. This commission you got, Marcus. When did that happen exactly? He shifted uncomfortably. Few months ago. What was it for? He hesitated. The Riverside Development Project. That is interesting because I ran into your colleague Jim Patterson at the grocery store last week. He mentioned the Riverside project had been put on hold indefinitely. Budget issues. He seemed concerned about the whole team's job security. Marcus went very still. Jessica's hand was practically welded to her earring. Jim does not know about all the commission structures, Marcus said finally. No, I suppose he would not, especially if they did not actually happen. The kitchen fell silent except for the tick of the grandfather clock. Finally, Jessica spoke up. "Eleanor, I think we should go. This conversation is not productive." "You are probably right." I walked them to the door. "Give Victoria my regards. Tell her I hope she feels better about everything." As I watched them drive away, I realized the game was more complicated than I had thought. Victoria was not just running a con on me. She was running one on Marcus and Jessica too. The question was whether they were willing participants or just as much victims as I was supposed to be. Either way, it was time to level the playing field. I spent the rest of the day playing detective, and what I discovered made my blood boil. Marcus had not gotten a commission. In fact, according to his company's public LinkedIn page, the Riverside project had been cancelled 6 months ago. The $45,000 bracelet had not come from his success. It had come from somewhere else entirely. A quick check of public records showed that Marcus and Jessica had refinanced their house 3 months ago. $60,000 in cash-out refinancing approved in October, right around the time Victoria would have been gathering all that financial intelligence from her little surveillance operation in my house. If you are watching this, please subscribe and let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. The pieces were falling into place, and the picture they formed made me sick to my stomach. Victoria had spent months collecting information about my finances, my property values, my late husband's retirement accounts. Then somehow she had convinced my son to go into debt to buy her an expensive gift, probably with promises about how it would all work out in the end. I had a feeling I knew what those promises involved. My laptop screen showed the results of another search I had been dreading. Eleanor Morrison property records. Sure enough, there it was. My house had been appraised 3 months ago, an appraisal I had never authorized, never been present for, and never seen the results of. The estimated value made my heart skip a beat. $640,000. Thomas and I had bought this house for $80,000 40 years ago. We had had no idea it had appreciated so dramatically, but apparently Victoria Walsh had known exactly what it was worth. I called the appraisal company using my most confused, elderly lady voice. "Hello, this is Eleanor Morrison on Oak Street. I am calling about the appraisal that was done on my property in October. I seem to have misplaced the paperwork." "Of course, Mrs. Morrison. Let me pull that up. Yes, here it is. October 18th. The appraisal was ordered by Marcus Morrison for estate planning purposes." Estate planning. My estate being planned while I was still very much alive. And he was authorized to order this. How exactly? Well, he is listed as your power of attorney on the request form. He provided all the necessary documentation. Power of attorney. I thanked the woman and hung up, my hands shaking with rage. I had never ever granted Marcus power of attorney over anything, but apparently someone had created paperwork claiming otherwise. I drove to my lawyer's office without calling ahead. Patricia Hamilton had handled Thomas's will and our estate planning for 20 years. If anyone had filed power of attorney documents, she would have copies. "Eleanor." Patricia looked surprised to see me. "I was not expecting you today. How are you holding up?" "I need to see my files, Patricia. All of them. Especially anything involving power of attorney." Her face grew serious. "Eleanor, is everything all right?" I explained about the appraisal, about Marcus's supposed authorization, about Victoria Walsh and her surveillance photos and her mysterious financial advice. Patricia listened with growing alarm. "Eleanor, I have never prepared any power of attorney documents for you. You were very clear after Thomas died that you wanted to maintain complete control of your affairs. Then how did Marcus get authorization to order an appraisal of my house?" Patricia was already turning to her computer. "Let me check something." Her fingers flew over the keyboard, then stopped. Her face went white. "What is it?" "Someone filed a power of attorney document with the county clerk 3 weeks ago. It is notarized and appears to grant Marcus Morrison complete authority over your financial and property matters." The room spun a little. "That is impossible. I never signed anything like that. Eleanor, I need you to look at something." She turned her monitor toward me. There on the screen was a legal document bearing my name and signature. It looked official, complete with a notary seal and witness signatures. It was also a complete forgery. The signature looks like yours, Patricia said carefully. I studied it closely. It is close, but look at the E in Eleanor. I always make it with a distinctive flourish at the bottom. This one does not have that. And I never dot my I's with circles. I use plain dots. I pointed to several inconsistencies in the handwriting. This is a very good forgery, but it is not my signature. Patricia's expression was grim. Eleanor, if someone forged legal documents to gain control of your assets, this is fraud. Serious fraud. We need to call the police. Not yet, I said quickly. I need to understand the full scope of what they are planning first. If I report this now, they will just destroy evidence and claim it was all a misunderstanding. Eleanor, this is dangerous. If they have fake power of attorney documents, they could sell your house, drain your accounts, anything. I thought about Victoria's bank statements, about her daughter, the financial advisor, about the bracelet that Marcus could not actually afford. I think they are planning exactly that, but I want to catch them in the act. Patricia looked horrified. I cannot advise you to wait on this. You are not advising me. I am telling you what I am going to do. I stood up, feeling more determined than I had in years. But I need you to do something for me. I want to change my will. Change it how? I smiled, and it was not a nice smile. I want to leave everything to the Alzheimer's Association. Effective immediately. Make it ironclad, Patricia. No loopholes, no contests. No way for Marcus or anyone else to inherit so much as a penny. Eleanor, are you sure? You are angry right now, and decisions made in anger. I am not angry, Patricia. I am clear-headed for the first time in months. I thought about my $22 cookie jar and $45,000 worth of diamonds around Victoria's wrist. I am done being taken advantage of by people who think love comes with a price tag. As I drove home, I felt lighter than I had since Thomas died. For the first time in this whole mess, I was 3 steps ahead instead of 3 steps behind. Victoria Walsh and my son thought they were playing chess with a helpless old woman. They were about to learn that this old woman had been watching, learning, and planning. And unlike them, I actually knew the rules of the game. Tomorrow the real fun would begin. The next morning brought the kind of crisp January air that makes everything seem possible. I was humming while I made coffee, planning my day, when the phone rang. Victoria Walsh's voice was honey-sweet and full of concern. Eleanor, darling, I hope you are feeling better after our little misunderstanding yesterday. Oh, Victoria, I am feeling wonderful. Thank you for asking. That is so good to hear. Listen, I was hoping we could talk. Just the two of us, woman to woman. Marcus and Jessica are so worried about you. If you are watching this, please subscribe and let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. I almost laughed. Of course they were worried. They had probably spent all night wondering how much I actually knew about their little scheme. I would be happy to talk, Victoria. Why do not you come over for coffee this afternoon? Actually, I was thinking we could meet somewhere neutral. That lovely little cafe on Main Street, say 2 o'clock? Neutral territory. She was being careful now, making sure our conversation could not be recorded or interrupted. That sounds perfect. I will see you then. I spent the morning preparing for what I suspected would be Victoria's first serious attempt at manipulation. I dressed carefully in my best sweater, Thomas's wedding ring prominently displayed, just a touch of lipstick. I wanted to look like a harmless widow, someone who might be easily convinced to make poor decisions. The cafe was nearly empty on a Tuesday afternoon. Victoria had chosen a corner booth where we could talk privately, and she had arrived early to secure the position. I noted the way she had positioned herself with her back to the wall where she could see everyone coming and going. This was not a grieving widow having coffee with a friend. This was a predator preparing to strike. Eleanor, you look lovely today, Victoria said, standing to hug me. I'm so glad we could do this. Too, dear. It is nice to have some girl time. We ordered coffee and made small talk for a few minutes about the weather, her new bracelet, how thoughtful Marcus was. Then Victoria leaned forward with that concerned expression she had perfected. Eleanor, I want you to know that Marcus and Jessica are very worried about you. They think you might be feeling left out, maybe a little jealous of our relationship. I widened my eyes innocently. Jealous. Oh my goodness, why would they think that? Well, the questions yesterday about my daughter, about my finances, it felt a little intrusive, like maybe you were trying to find reasons not to trust me. Victoria, I hope you do not think I was prying. I was just making conversation. She reached across the table and patted my hand. Course, sweetie. I know you meant well. But here is the thing, and I hope you will not be offended, but Marcus has shared some concerns about your financial situation. Here we go. I made myself look confused. My financial situation. He is worried that you are not being strategic about your assets. You know, planning for the future, making sure your money works as hard as possible for you. I think I am doing fine, dear. Thomas left me well provided for. Victoria's smile became more intense. But Eleanor, are you really maximizing your potential? That beautiful house of yours, for instance. It is worth so much money just sitting there. You could be leveraging that equity, making investments that would secure your future. Oh yes. Marcus mentioned that you have been talking about maybe downsizing, finding something more manageable. And I happen to know some people who specialize in helping seniors transition their assets in tax-advantaged ways. I blinked slowly as if processing this information. Tax-advantaged ways. It is complicated, but basically there are legal strategies that can protect your wealth from estate taxes while giving you access to much more liquid capital. You could sell the house to an investment firm I work with, then lease it back at a very reasonable rate. You would have hundreds of thousands of dollars to invest, plus you could stay right where you are. The audacity was breathtaking. She was proposing that I sell my house to her associates, then rent it back from them, essentially paying them to live in my own home while they controlled the asset. That sounds complicated, I said carefully. It is, which is why you need experts to handle it. People you trust. She squeezed my hand. Eleanor, I have become very fond of you. You are like the mother I never had. I want to help you make the smartest decisions possible. The mother she never had. While her actual daughter called her every other day and worried when she did not come home. And Marcus agrees with this plan. Oh, Marcus is very excited about it. He could help manage your investments, make sure you are getting the best returns. It would be a wonderful way for you two to work together on securing your future. There it was. The full scope of the con. Sell my house to Victoria's associates. Give Marcus control of the proceeds and somehow trust that they would all act in my best interests while I paid rent to live in my own home. Sounds like you have put a lot of thought into this, Victoria. I have, because I care about you, Eleanor. We all do. She leaned back, confident now that she had me considering the bait. Course, timing is important with these kinds of strategies. The investment firm I am thinking of only takes on new clients at certain times of the year. When would that be? Well, we would need to move fairly quickly, within the next few weeks, probably. Course. Create urgency. Pressure me to make a decision before I had time to think it through or consult with anyone who might talk sense into me. I nodded thoughtfully. This is a lot to consider, Victoria. I would need to think about it carefully. Course, sweetie, but do not think too long. Opportunities like this do not come around often. As we said goodbye in the parking lot, Victoria hugged me warmly. I'm so glad we had this talk, Eleanor. I feel like we understand each other so much better now. I hugged her back, smiling sweetly. Oh, Victoria, I think you are absolutely right. I understand perfectly now. Driving home, I could not stop grinning. Victoria had just confessed to a plan that amounted to elder fraud, real estate scam, and conspiracy to commit theft. She had handed me everything I needed to destroy her, Marcus, and Jessica in one tidy conversation. But I was not ready to spring that trap yet. First, I wanted to see how far they were willing to go, because something told me Victoria's little investment firm proposal was just the beginning of what they had planned for my assets. And I was very curious to find out exactly how desperate they would become to get their hands on my money. I did not have to wait long to see how desperate they would become. 3 days after my enlightening coffee date with Victoria, Marcus showed up at my door with a folder full of official-looking documents and the kind of smile that used to work when he was 8 years old and had broken something expensive. Mom, I brought those investment papers Victoria mentioned. I thought we could go through them together. If you are watching this, please subscribe and let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. I ushered him into the living room, noting how his eyes immediately went to the family photos on the mantelpiece. Photos of him graduating college, getting married, buying his first house. All funded by parents who had sacrificed to give him the best life possible. The irony clearly was not lost on him because his jaw tightened before he looked away. "These are quite comprehensive," I said, flipping through page after page of legal gibberish designed to confuse and intimidate. Reverse mortgage applications, investment portfolio transfers, property liquidation agreements. My goodness, Marcus, you have been busy. Victoria's associates are very thorough. They want to make sure everything is done properly legally. I raised an eyebrow at that last word. Legally. That is important, right? I set the papers aside and looked directly at my son. Marcus, I need to ask you something and I want you to tell me the truth. Are you in some kind of financial trouble? His rehearsed composure cracked slightly. What makes you ask that? Well, let me see. You buy a $45,000 bracelet you cannot afford for a woman you have known 9 months. You refinance your house. You claim to have gotten a commission that your company has no record of. And now you are pressuring me to liquidate my assets for mysterious investment opportunities. I smiled sweetly. Call it mother's intuition. Marcus ran his hands through his hair, suddenly looking older than his 36 years. Mom, it is complicated. I'm sure it is. Help me understand. For a moment I thought he might actually tell me the truth. His shoulders sagged and he stared at his hands like a little boy caught stealing cookies. Then his phone buzzed and I saw Victoria's name on the screen. Whatever spell of honesty had been building broke immediately. Look, Mom, the bottom line is this. You are sitting on a goldmine here. This house, Dad's retirement accounts, your savings, but it is not working for you. It is just sitting there while inflation eats away at its value. Victoria's investment firm can fix that. They specialize in helping seniors maximize their assets. You could be making 20 times what you are earning now in interest alone. I nodded thoughtfully. 20 times. That is quite a return. What is their track record with other clients? Marcus's eyes shifted away from mine. They are very exclusive. They do not advertise their client list for privacy reasons. Course not. And you have met these mysterious investors personally. Victoria handles all the client relations. She has experience with these kinds of high-level financial strategies. Does she now? What kind of experience exactly? Mom, why are you being so suspicious? Victoria is trying to help us. Help you, Marcus. I leaned forward, my voice gentle but firm. Do you remember when you were 12 and you wanted that expensive mountain bike for your birthday? The one that cost more than we could afford. He looked confused by the change in subject. Yeah, I remember. Do you remember what your father and I did? You both worked overtime. Dad picked up weekend carpentry jobs. You both sacrificed to get me that bike. That is right. We sacrificed for you because that is what parents do. We put your happiness above our comfort. I paused, letting that sink in. Now I want you to think very carefully about what you are asking me to do here. His face flushed red. That is different. This is about your financial security. No, Marcus. This is about $45,000 you spent on a bracelet and however much more debt you are carrying that I do not know about yet. He stood up abruptly, the mask finally falling away completely. You know what, Mom? You are right. We are in trouble. Jessica lost her job 6 months ago. We are behind on the mortgage, behind on everything. And yes, I bought Victoria that bracelet because she promised to help us figure out a way to fix this mess. Finally, some honesty. And what exactly did she promise you? She said if we showed her how much we valued her advice, she could help us restructure our finances. She knows people, Mom. Important people with money. People like her mysterious investment firm. And all we need is some startup capital to get into their program. Capital that you are just letting sit here doing nothing. There it was. The full truth laid bare in all its pathetic desperation. My son had not bought Victoria a bracelet out of generosity. He had bought it as a down payment on a con job, using money he had borrowed against his house, betting that he could manipulate his mother into bailing him out. And if I do not provide this startup capital, Marcus's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. Mom, we could lose the house. The kids' college funds are already gone. Jessica is talking about divorce lawyers. My heart broke a little. Despite everything, this was still my son. Still the little boy who had once brought me dandelions from the yard and called them flowers. But he was also a grown man who had chosen to solve his problems by defrauding his mother instead of asking for help. Marcus, why did you not just come to me honestly? Why all this elaborate deception with Victoria and fake power of attorney documents and investment scams? He went very still. What power of attorney documents? The ones filed with the county clerk, giving you legal authority over my finances. The ones with my forged signature. The color drained from his face. Mom, I do not know anything about power of attorney documents. That was not part of the plan. Or plan. Victoria said she said you would resist the investment opportunity at first. But if we showed you how successful and grateful we were, you would eventually come around. She said older people needed to see proof of prosperity before they would trust financial advice. I stared at my son, seeing him clearly for perhaps the first time in years. He was a victim too, just a more willing one than I was supposed to be. Marcus, Victoria Walsh is not who she pretends to be. She has been running surveillance on this family for months, forging legal documents, and setting up what amounts to an elaborate theft of my assets. That is impossible. She has been nothing but kind to us. Kind people do not take photographs of other people's social security cards, Marcus. Kind people do not have their daughters file missing person reports when they disappear for a few hours. He sank back into his chair, looking lost and confused. For a moment I felt sorry for him. Then I remembered the $22 cookie jar. And the feeling passed. Mom, what are you saying? I am saying you and Jessica have been played by a professional, and you were so desperate to solve your financial problems that you did not bother to question why a wealthy widow would need you to buy her expensive gifts before she would help you. Marcus buried his face in his hands. When he looked up again, his eyes were filled with tears. God, Mom, what have I done? What Marcus had done, as it turned out, was worse than either of us had initially realized. Over the next 2 hours, as I made coffee and forced him to walk me through every interaction he had had with Victoria Walsh, the scope of their manipulation became clear. Victoria had not just targeted our family randomly. She had been watching us since Thomas's funeral, studying our routines, learning our vulnerabilities. She had known Marcus was struggling financially before he had even realized it himself. And she had positioned herself perfectly to offer solutions when the pressure became unbearable. She knew everything, Mom. She knew about Jessica's job situation before Jessica even got laid off. She knew about the refinancing before we applied for it. It was like she could predict exactly what we would need and when we would need it. I thought about those surveillance photos in her phone, the months of preparation, the carefully staged introduction at Jessica's baby shower. Marcus, this was not a coincidence. Victoria Walsh researched our family like a doctoral thesis. She knew exactly which buttons to push and when. But why us? We are not rich people. I walked to the window, looking out at the house that had become the centerpiece of Victoria's elaborate con. We are not rich, but this property is worth $640,000. Add in Thomas's retirement accounts my savings and the insurance money, and we're talking about close to $1 million in assets. Marcus went very quiet. That much. I turned back to face him. Enough to make it worth months of planning and a $45,000 investment in gaining your trust. Jesus, Mom, I am so sorry. I've screwed up everything. Sorry was not going to fix the forged documents or the refinancing or the fact that his financial problems had made him vulnerable to a predator. But it was a start. Marcus, I need you to be completely honest with me now. What exactly did Victoria promise you in return for buying her that bracelet? He took a shaky breath. She said her investment firm required a demonstration of good faith from potential clients, something to show we were serious about working with them. The bracelet was supposed to prove we could handle significant financial decisions. And after the bracelet, she said they would review our financial situation and help us restructure everything. Consolidate our debts, set up new investment portfolios, maybe even help us qualify for better mortgage terms. For a fee, I assume. Oh yes. But she said the returns would more than offset the costs. She showed me projections, charts, testimonials from other families they had helped. I almost felt sorry for him. Victoria had played him so skillfully, giving him exactly the hope he needed to hear while slowly drawing him deeper into debt and desperation. Marcus, did you ever meet any of these other families?
No.
But Victoria said they valued their privacy. High net worth individuals do not like to publicize their financial strategies. And you never thought to independently verify any of this. His face crumpled. Mom, I was drowning. Jessica was talking about divorce lawyers. The kids were asking why we could not afford their school activities anymore. And I was working 70-hour weeks just to stay afloat. When Victoria offered a solution, I grabbed it like a life preserver. I understood desperation, but I also understood that desperation did not excuse what he had been willing to do to me. So you decided to throw your mother overboard to save yourself. That is not how she presented it. She said it was a win-win situation. You would get better returns on your investments, we would get help with our debts, and everyone would be better off financially. Except that I would have to sell my house and rent it back from her associates. She said you had been talking about downsizing anyway. I never said any such thing. Marcus looked stricken. But she said you had mentioned feeling overwhelmed by the maintenance, that the house was too big for just one person. Another lie, carefully crafted to make their theft sound like a favor. Marcus, I love this house. Your father and I built our entire life here. It is where you took your first steps, where we celebrated every holiday, where I plan to live until they carry me out. He was crying now, really crying. And despite everything, my heart ached for him. He was still my child, still the little boy who had once thought I could fix anything that was broken. Mom, I do not know how to fix this. Even if we wanted to back out now, I do not know how. The mortgage payment is due next week. And Victoria keeps talking about the investment firm's timeline. How they need decisions soon or the opportunity will disappear. Marcus, there is no investment firm. There never was. Victoria Walsh is running a con, and you are both the bait and the backup plan. What do you mean? I sat down across from him, choosing my words carefully. I think Victoria's original plan was to manipulate me directly into signing over my assets. But when that proved more difficult than expected, she shifted to using you as leverage. Get you so deep in debt that I would have no choice but to help, then present her solution as the only way to save the family. His face went white. You think this was all calculated from the beginning? Marcus, she had photographs of my social security card. She filed fake power of attorney documents. She has been in contact with property appraisers and God knows who else. This was not desperation or opportunism. This was a professional operation. We sat in silence for a long moment, both of us processing the magnitude of what Victoria had orchestrated. Finally, Marcus looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. Mom, what do we do now? For the first time since this whole mess had started, I smiled genuinely at my son. Now, sweetheart, we turn the tables. Victoria Walsh thinks she has been playing chess with amateurs. She is about to discover that this particular amateur has been learning the game while she was not paying attention. What do you mean? I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone, scrolling to the voice recording app one had started when Marcus first arrived. I mean, I have been documenting every conversation, every confession, every admission of guilt. Victoria may be good at running cons, but she made one critical mistake. What is that? She underestimated the woman whose life she was trying to steal. I stood up, feeling more energized than I had in months. Now let's call Jessica and get her over here. It is time for this family to have a completely honest conversation about exactly what we are going to do to Victoria Walsh. Marcus looked up at me with something approaching hope. You are going to help us. I thought about the $22 cookie jar sitting on my kitchen counter, about the forged documents and the surveillance photos and the elaborate manipulation that had nearly destroyed my family. Oh, sweetheart, I am going to do so much more than help you. I am going to teach Victoria Walsh why you should never try to con a woman who has lived through 75 years of people underestimating her. Jessica arrived within the hour, looking like she had been crying for days. When she saw Marcus's tear-stained face and the pile of investment documents scattered across my coffee table, she sank into Thomas's old recliner with a defeated sigh. "She knows, does she not?" Jessica asked quietly. "I know about the forged documents, the fake investment firm, and the fact that you are both in over your heads with a professional con artist," I replied, pouring her a cup of coffee. "What I do not know is how much of this you were aware of versus how much Victoria fed you in carefully crafted lies. If you are watching this, please subscribe and let me know where you are watching from in the comments below." Jessica wrapped her hands around the mug like it was an anchor. I knew we could not afford the bracelet. I knew the commission story was a lie. But Victoria was so convincing about the investment opportunity, and I was so scared about losing the house. She trailed off, staring into her coffee. "Jessica, I am not here to judge you. I am here to figure out how we clean up this mess before Victoria destroys all of us. Can it be cleaned up?" Jessica looked up at me with desperate hope. "Or are we completely screwed?" "Well, that depends on how far you are willing to go to make this right." Marcus leaned forward. "Mom, we will do anything. Whatever it takes." I walked to my desk and pulled out a folder I had been preparing for the last 3 days. "Good, because what I am about to propose is going to require both of you to be better actors than you have ever been in your lives." I spread my plan across the coffee table. Printed emails, fake financial documents, and a timeline that would make Victoria Walsh very sorry she had ever heard the name Eleanor Morrison. "Here is what is going to happen tomorrow. Marcus, you are going to call Victoria and tell her I have agreed to the investment proposal. You are going to say I was initially resistant, but after seeing how happy she had made you both, I have decided to trust her judgment." Jessica frowned. "But will she not be suspicious if you suddenly change your mind?" "Not if Marcus sells it right. Victoria expects elderly people to be confused and changeable. She will chalk it up to typical senior behavior and congratulate herself on her patience paying off." I pulled out the next set of documents. "Then, Jessica, you are going to arrange a meeting with Victoria and her mysterious investment firm. Tell her I want to meet them face to face before signing anything, that I am old-fashioned that way." "But they do not exist," Marcus pointed out. "Exactly. Which means Victoria is going to have to scramble to produce them, or she is going to have to admit there is no investment firm and reveal her real plan." Jessica was studying the fake documents I had prepared. "Eleanor, these look incredibly official. How did you—" "I may be old, but I am not technologically illiterate. Amazing what you can accomplish with a good printer and too much time on your hands." Smiled. "Victoria is not the only one who can forge convincing paperwork." Marcus picked up one of the fake bank statements showing dramatically inflated account balances. "Mom, what is all this supposed to accomplish?" "It is bait, sweetheart. Victoria thinks I am worth $1 million. These documents suggest I am actually worth closer to $2 million. When she sees these, her greed is going to override her caution. And then what?" I pulled out my phone and showed them the recording app. "Then we document everything. Every conversation, every promise, every illegal proposal. By the time we are done, we will have enough evidence to send Victoria Walsh to prison for elder fraud, forgery, and conspiracy to commit theft." Jessica looked skeptical. "But will she not be suspicious if we are suddenly so cooperative?" "Jessica, Victoria has been playing a long game for months. She is emotionally invested in this con succeeding. When people are that close to a big payoff, they tend to ignore warning signs that would normally make them cautious." I walked to the window, looking out at the neighborhood where I had lived for 40 years. "Besides, she has already made one critical mistake that is going to be her downfall." "What is that?" Marcus asked. "She filed those forged power of attorney documents with the county clerk. That is a felony, and there is a paper trail leading directly back to her. Even if she tries to run now, she has already committed a crime that can be prosecuted." The room was quiet for a long moment as Marcus and Jessica processed the scope of what I was proposing. "Mom," Marcus said finally, "this sounds incredibly risky. What if something goes wrong?" I thought about the $22 cookie jar, about Victoria's condescending smile over coffee, about the months of surveillance and manipulation they had subjected my family to. "Marcus, Victoria Walsh made a fundamental error in judgment. She looked at me and saw a helpless elderly woman who could be easily manipulated and discarded. She never considered that I might be smart enough to figure out her game or stubborn enough to fight back. Jessica was reading through the fake documents more carefully. Eleanor, some of these investment terms are incredibly sophisticated. How did you know what to include? I called Angela Walsh's financial planning office and told her assistant I was thinking about hiring her to review some investment proposals for potential fraud indicators. She was very helpful in explaining what red flags to look for. I smiled at their shocked expressions. It turns out Victoria's daughter has published several articles about exactly the kind of scam she has been running on us. You called her daughter's office. Marcus looked horrified. Called seeking financial advice. Perfectly legitimate. And I learned that Angela Walsh specializes in prosecuting exactly this type of elder fraud. When this all comes out, Victoria is going to have to explain to her financial advisor daughter why she has been running the same scams Angela built her career fighting against. Jessica set down her coffee cup, a new determination in her eyes. What do you need us to do? I need you both to sell this like your lives depend on it, because in a very real sense they do. If we cannot prove Victoria manipulated you into participating in fraud, you could both end up facing criminal charges as her accomplices. That sobered them quickly. Marcus straightened up, suddenly looking more focused than I had seen him in months. Mom, you really think we can pull this off? Sweetheart, I spent 40 years as a social worker dealing with emergencies, managing crises, and thinking fast under pressure. Victoria Walsh picked the wrong woman to mess with. I gathered up my fake documents and smiled at both of them. Now let's go over exactly what you are going to say to Victoria tomorrow, because by the time we are finished with her, she is going to wish she had never heard the name Morrison. The meeting was set for Friday afternoon at Victoria's house, and she was practically vibrating with excitement when she opened the door. She had dressed for success in an expensive silk blouse and her best jewelry, clearly expecting to close the biggest deal of her career. Eleanor, Marcus, Jessica, come in, come in. She ushered us into her living room, which had been transformed into a makeshift conference room with presentation materials spread across every surface. I'm so excited you have decided to move forward with this opportunity. If you are watching this, please subscribe and let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. The room was a shrine to luxury. Expensive artwork, designer furniture, fresh flowers that probably cost more than most people's weekly grocery budget. All of it paid for, I suspected, by previous victims who had been unfortunate enough to trust Victoria Walsh with their financial futures. Victoria, before we begin, I would like to meet with your investment team, I said, settling into an uncomfortable modern chair that was all style and no substance. I am old-fashioned about these things. I prefer to look people in the eye before I trust them with my life savings. Victoria's smile flickered for just a moment. Course, Eleanor. Unfortunately, they were called away on an emergency with another client, but I have all their credentials here, and I can answer any questions you might have. An emergency? I raised an eyebrow. What kind of emergency requires an entire investment team? Well, you know how it is with high-stakes financial matters. Sometimes situations require immediate attention. Victoria shuffled through her papers nervously. But I assure you they have reviewed your case thoroughly, and they are very excited about the potential returns. Jessica leaned forward, playing her part perfectly. Victoria, Eleanor has been asking some very detailed questions about the investment structure. She wants to understand exactly how her money will be managed. Of course, that is very wise. Victoria spread out a series of charts and graphs that looked impressive but were essentially meaningless. Your initial investment of $500,000 would be placed in a diversified portfolio of high-yield securities. I pretended to study the documents carefully. $500,000. But Victoria, my assets are worth considerably more than that. Victoria's eyes lit up like a slot machine hitting the jackpot. Well, yes, but we typically recommend starting with a conservative amount for the first year, then expanding the portfolio as returns demonstrate the program's success. I pulled out my fake bank statements and spread them across her coffee table. But according to my financial review, I have liquid assets of nearly $2 million. Should I not be maximizing the growth potential on all of it? Victoria practically lunged for the documents, her composure cracking as greed overrode her caution. Eleanor, these numbers are this is substantially more than we initially discussed. Yes, well, I had my accountant do a comprehensive asset evaluation after our coffee meeting. Turns out Thomas was even more financially savvy than I had realized. I watched Victoria's pupils dilate as she calculated her potential take from a $2 million score. Marcus played his role beautifully, looking slightly overwhelmed by the numbers. Mom, I had no idea Dad had invested so much. No wonder you have been able to live so comfortably. Your father was very good with money, I said, patting Marcus's hand. He always said the secret was to never let anyone know exactly what you had until you were ready to use it. Victoria was frantically taking notes, probably calculating commission percentages in her head. Eleanor, with assets of this magnitude, we definitely want to structure the investment differently. Much more aggressive growth strategies, probably some offshore components to minimize tax liability. Offshore. I widened my eyes innocently. Is that legal? Completely legal when structured properly. My associates specialize in international investment vehicles that take advantage of favorable tax treaties. Jessica shot me a look. Victoria was now proposing money laundering in addition to fraud. We were gathering evidence faster than I had dared hope. Victoria, this all sounds wonderful, but I am curious about something, I said, settling back in my chair. How exactly did you get into this line of work? You mentioned having experience with high-level financial strategies. For the first time since we had arrived, Victoria looked genuinely uncomfortable. Well, I have worked with several investment firms over the years. I have a talent for identifying clients who would benefit from specialized services. And your daughter Angela, does she work in finance as well? The question hit like a physical blow. Victoria went very still, her carefully maintained composure finally cracking completely. My daughter does not work in this field, no. Oh, that is interesting because when I mentioned your name to my financial advisor, she said she had heard of an Angela Walsh who has made quite a name for herself in estate planning and fraud prevention. The silence in the room was deafening. Victoria stared at me with the expression of someone who just realized they had walked into a trap. Eleanor, I am not sure what you are implying. I am not implying anything, Victoria. I am stating facts. Your daughter Angela Walsh is a financial advisor in Portland who specializes in elder fraud prevention. She has built her career fighting exactly the kind of scam you have been running on my family for the last 4 months. Victoria shot to her feet, her mask finally falling away completely. I think this meeting is over. Oh, I think you are right about that. I stood up as well, pulling out my phone and stopping the recording app. One had been running since we had arrived. Marcus, Jessica, I think it is time we called the police. Victoria's face went white. You have been recording this. Every conversation we have had, every proposal you have made, every illegal scheme you have suggested, including your offer 5 minutes ago to help me launder money through offshore accounts. You cannot prove anything. It is your word against mine. I smiled, pulling out the folder of evidence I had been building for weeks. Actually, Victoria, I can prove everything. The forged power of attorney documents filed with the county clerk, the unauthorized property appraisal, the fake investment proposals, the surveillance photos you took of my personal documents. Victoria sank back into her chair, finally understanding that her carefully constructed con was collapsing around her. The question now, I continued, is whether you want to make this easy or hard, because either way you're going to prison. The only variable is how many additional charges you rack up between now and when the handcuffs go on. Marcus stepped forward, and for the first time in months, he looked like the strong man I had raised. Victoria, I trusted you. We all did. And you used that trust to try to destroy my family. Marcus, you do not understand. I was trying to help you. Help us. Jessica laughed bitterly. You manipulated us into going into debt to buy you jewelry, then tried to trick Eleanor into signing over her life savings to criminals. How exactly was that helping us? Victoria looked around the room desperately, clearly searching for any angle that might salvage the situation. Eleanor, we can work this out. I can make sure you get your money back. All of it. What money, Victoria? The money from your non-existent investment firm. Or are you talking about returning the $45,000 Marcus borrowed against his house to buy you a bracelet? Her shoulders sagged in defeat. What do you want? I walked to her window, looking out at the expensive neighborhood she had been living in while running cons on elderly victims. I want you to call your daughter Angela and explain to her exactly what her mother has been doing for a living. I want you to return every penny you have stolen from Marcus and Jessica. And I want you to provide the district attorney with information about every other victim you have scammed over the years. And if I do all that, then maybe I will recommend that the prosecutor go easy on you when you are sentenced. Victoria stared at me for a long moment, finally seeing me clearly for the first time since we had met. You are not the helpless old woman I thought you were. I smiled, thinking about the $22 cookie jar that had started this whole mess. No, Victoria, I really am not. 7 months later, I was sitting on my front porch with a glass of lemonade and the morning newspaper when Marcus and Jessica pulled into my driveway. They had been coming by every Sunday since Victoria's sentencing. Partly out of guilt and partly, I suspected, because they had finally realized what they had almost lost. Victoria Walsh had pled guilty to elder fraud, forgery, conspiracy to commit theft, and money laundering. She was currently serving a 5-year sentence in federal prison. And her daughter Angela had testified at her sentencing hearing about the devastating impact her crimes had on families like ours. It had been one of the most heartbreaking things I had ever witnessed. A daughter having to publicly condemn her mother's choices while still somehow trying to show love for the woman who had raised her. Marcus got out of the car first, followed by Jessica and the grandchildren I had not seen much of during Victoria's manipulation campaign. 8-year-old Emma ran straight to me for a hug, while 12-year-old Jake hung back with that awkward preteen uncertainty. "Hi, Grandma Eleanor," Emma squeezed me tight. "Daddy says we are going to have a real Christmas this year, not like the weird one we had before." "Emma," Jessica scolded gently, but I just laughed. She is not wrong. Last Christmas was pretty weird, was it not? Marcus climbed the porch steps slowly, carrying a small wrapped box. "Mom, we brought you something. An early Christmas present, you could say." I accepted the box suspiciously. The last gift from Marcus had not exactly been a highlight of our relationship. But when I opened it, I found something that made my heart skip a beat. It was a small framed photograph of Thomas and me from our 30th anniversary, but it was not one I had seen before. We looked happy and content, standing in front of the rose garden he had planted for me. "Where did you find this?" "I found it in Dad's desk when we were cleaning out some old boxes. I think he was planning to have it enlarged as a surprise for you before he got sick." I traced my finger along Thomas's face in the photo, remembering that day when everything seemed settled and the future stretched out before us like a peaceful afternoon. "Marcus, this is beautiful." "Thank you." "Mom, there is something else." He sat down on the porch step next to my chair. "I have been going to counseling. Jessica and I both have. We are trying to figure out how we let ourselves get so lost that we almost threw away the most important relationships in our lives." Jessica nodded, settling into the other porch chair. "The therapist says that financial stress can make people do things they would never normally consider. But that is not an excuse for what we did to you." "No, it is not," I agreed. "But it is an explanation, and that is a start." Emma was playing in the front yard while Jake sat on the porch railing, pretending not to listen to the adult conversation but obviously absorbing every word. "Mom," Marcus continued, "I need you to know that we have paid back every penny of the refinancing. It took all of our savings and we will be eating spaghetti and rice for the next year, but we are debt-free. And the bracelet? Sold it and returned the money to the bank. Victoria's restitution covered the gap between what we owed and what we got for it." I nodded approvingly. "How are you managing without Jessica's income?" "I am working 2 jobs now," Jessica said. "It is not ideal, but we are making it work." "And Marcus got promoted for real this time." Actually, Marcus added, "I got promoted because I started working harder instead of looking for get-rich-quick schemes to solve our problems." We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching Emma chase butterflies in the front yard. The morning was warm and peaceful, with the kind of gentle breeze that makes you grateful to be alive. "Grandma," Jake said suddenly, "Dad told us about the lady who tried to steal your house." "He did he?" He said she was really smart and almost fooled all of you. I looked at Marcus, who shrugged sheepishly. I thought they should know the truth. Age-appropriate version, obviously. And what did you learn from Daddy's story? Asked Jake. The 12-year-old thought carefully before answering. That grown-ups can make really stupid mistakes when they are scared. And that you should never try to trick Grandma Eleanor because she is way smarter than she looks. I burst out laughing. Jake, that might be the wisest thing anyone has said all year. Marcus grinned. He gets that from his grandmother. As the afternoon wore on, we fell into the kind of easy family rhythm that I had missed during those dark months of Victoria's manipulation. Emma showed me her latest art project. Jake told me about his baseball team, and Marcus and Jessica actually seemed to relax for the first time since I had known them. When they were getting ready to leave, Jessica hugged me tightly. Eleanor, I know we cannot undo what happened, but I want you to know that we are going to spend the rest of our lives making sure nothing like that ever happens again. I know you will, sweetheart. Marcus was the last to say goodbye. Mom, there is one more thing. I know this does not make up for anything, but I wanted you to have this. He handed me an envelope, and inside I found a handwritten letter that started with Dear Mom and went on for 3 pages. It was an apology, but more than that, it was an acknowledgement of everything I had done for him over the years and a promise to be the son I had raised him to be. At the bottom he had written, You taught me that family means putting each other first even when it is hard. I forgot that lesson for a while, but I promise I will never forget it again. After they left, I sat on my porch as the sun set, thinking about the strange journey that had brought us to this point. Victoria Walsh had tried to destroy my family, but in the end she had actually saved us. Her manipulation had forced us to confront truths we had been avoiding and find strength we did not know we had. I thought about the $22 cookie jar, which now sat on my mantelpiece as a reminder of how far we had all come. Next to it was a photo of Victoria being led away in handcuffs, not because I wanted to gloat, but because I never wanted to forget how close I had come to losing everything that mattered. My phone buzzed with a text message from Angela Walsh. Over the past few months, she had become an unexpected friend, bonding with me over the shared experience of loving someone who had made terrible choices. How was the family visit? Her message read. Type back perfect. How are you holding up? Good days and bad days, but more good ones lately. Thank you for not giving up on her completely. The letters you send her in prison mean more than you know. I smiled, looking up at the stars that were just starting to appear in the darkening sky. Even in the midst of betrayal and heartbreak, there were still opportunities for grace and forgiveness. Victoria Walsh had tried to steal my money, my home, and my family. But she had never managed to steal my capacity for hope. As I stood up to go inside, I noticed a car slowing down in front of my house. For a moment, my heart rate spiked, old fears kicking in, but it was just a neighbor waving hello as they drove past. I waved back, laughing at myself for the momentary panic. Victoria Walsh was in prison. Her con had been exposed. And my family was whole again. There were no more shadows to fear, no more schemes to uncover, just a 75-year-old woman who had learned that sometimes the best gift you can give someone is the chance to face the consequences of their choices, grow from their mistakes, and find their way back to what really matters. I looked back at my house with its lights glowing warmly in the windows and smiled. Thomas would have been proud of how I had handled everything, not just the investigation and the evidence gathering, but the forgiveness that came after. Because in the end, that is what family really means. Not just putting each other first when it is easy, but finding your way back to love even when it is hard. And that, I thought as I headed inside, was worth far more than any diamond bracelet or investment scheme or $22 cookie jar could ever be. Thanks for listening. Do not forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters. If you are watching this, please subscribe and let me know where you are watching from in the comments below.